to. So feel free to join those groups so that the work for yesterday can continue. We'll be back at 9:40. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today. We are so delighted to have you. Before we start, I would morning. So before we start, morning. Okay, I would like to direct you all to the bottom of your Zoom screens where it is written interpretation. Kindly choose the language of your preference. For instance, if your language for preference is French, choose French, and then down there below you'll find mute original audio so that you can avoid the background noise. So please, let's go down to the interpretation button down at the bottom of our Zoom screens and choose our preferred language. There are 3 languages, English, French, and Portuguese, and then click on mute the original audio. So welcome, everyone. We are glad to have you today. It's a great day, Friday. And we have 2 sessions as usual. But before we start, I just want to give 5 minutes each to the French group and the group that is English 2, which did not make to present part of their presentation yesterday. That is to do with the budgeting. So would like just them, I know you might not have had enough time to complete everything, but we'll just proceed with where you are with the progress that you've made. And I want to start with the French group first. I'll give them 5 minutes and for instance, and maybe 2 additional minutes for feedback. And on standby, I have Hesbon. Good morning.
Bonjour. Oui, d'accord. Désolé.
Yes, morning.
Good morning, Hesbon.
Morning.
Yes, just wanted to ensure you're around. So the groups are going to start to present. So we'll give them feedback and also peer feedback from the other groups. A French group, is it Christian? Is it Liva who is presenting, please?
C'est Liva, c'est moi.
Okay, Liva. Liva,
oui.
You're welcome.
Oui, merci. Là, d'abord, je veux vous demander de nous excuser. Vous voyez, nous sommes en pleine session maintenant, qui a débuté le 4 mai. C'est-à-dire, c'est pourquoi, quelquefois, nous sommes très en retard d'entrée et aussi quitter très tôt la formation. Et nous n'avons pas vraiment assez de temps, mais nous avons fait notre mieux. Mais nous n'avons pas encore finalisé notre travail. Et si vous pouvez nous excuser et nous demandons l'autre groupe de faire leur présentation avant la nôtre. Est-ce que ça marche?
Yes, that can work. Then let's have English 2 presenting, and then Liva and her group will come next. English 2, who is presenting? Just the part you didn't present yesterday, so don't repeat what you presented yesterday. I think the part about budgeting, the slides that you hadn't worked on is what you're interested to see so that you can get some feedback, and you'll have some time to work on the feedback and to complete what you haven't completed yet.
Franklin, kindly share.
I'll share now, sorry. We start with the risk.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get it? Can you see it?
Yes, I can see it. Can we start with the problem first so that we can recap for the group? Let's start with the problem slide, and then followed by the risk, and then we'll end with the budget. Thank you.
Can you see the problem screen?
Not yet, ma. Frank?
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, please. Yes,
Okay.
please. Good morning, team, once again. I'm sorry, I'm in and out. I have network problems as well as sound issues. Jabu is on from Eswatini. Our problem we started yesterday, just to recap, that it was based on the high rate of GBV cases reported both in print and press media, especially impacting femicide issues on our adolescents and the young populace. This has been propounded by issues of COVID-19 regulations, and statistics reveals that there have been 29 cases from September 2020 compared to 2019, which was as low as 9%, which means there are high cases of unintended pregnancies impacting on our young girls and all. And this has also compounded issues of legal abortion and dumped babies. Again, 208 EUP cases has been reported since September in 2020 in some member states, which is really, really on the high side, and it's a cause for concern for our research. And then can we have the risk associated with this, the risk slide, frankly? Hello?
Yes, can you see it?
Not yet, ma'am. Can you show the risk?
Okay, sorry. Can you see it now?
Yes, and then
All
based on our, thank you, based on our problem, we've noted that there is lack of legal environment which may hamper our achievements in terms of redressing cases to do with gender-based violence and cases to do with sexual domestic violence and more. If we look into this kind of risk on number one, we were rushing. Number one, we can integrate it with point number 3, which specifically says one major risk is that children's courts, we have inadequate or we lack children's court to try GBV and sexual assault cases. The environment in most cases is not conducive. Rather, the environment is so intimidating, and we are making a call for more research on how this can be redressed. That is one risk. And the other risk is that the effects of COVID-19, which have been so much prolonged, such that we're not able to reach out to people and implement all activities due to COVID-19 regulations and restrictions. What this means is that there's this kind of fear in terms of even assessing treatment, in terms of reaching out to even social workers who can assist the youth were so much affected such that they were even vulnerable, even in terms of vulnerable due to issues of poverty, due to issues of insecurities. And with the restrictions, it was not easy to move from one point to another. And with the COVID curfew, most people were at work, not working. There was no food on the table and the like. There were anger issues within families. And the most affected were the young women and the young children, subjected to hunger, subjected to all forms of abuse. So that's another one. And one other issue is the issue of discrimination. One other risk in the handling of post-care abortion cases. there's been discrimination in terms of assessing medication thereafter. It's been a nightmare. And the end results is like, we'll be having a lot of cases, chronic cases, the post-effect, cancer, and even more diseases. In terms of budgeting, our problem statement stated that we need to visit the constituencies, with the education officials, to visit the schools, to visit the remote constituencies with the field officials, as well as with the media. So we felt we need, the session will run for first day in June, and then there'll be a followed up activity September, which means we need to go there twice. And that means that we'll need transport for going into the far remote constituency to conduct the need or situational analysis with respect to these issues. So the transport rate has been 250, and we rated duration is 2 days for 13 personnel, which include print and social media, print and press media, as well as the researcher plus the education and the field workers. And this aggregated to this amount that for this type of transport, because they had to be ferried in one transport. We had to use one transport. Also, accommodation rate for the first night, they need to sleep over. It's a very far away constituency. The rate is 750 for the 13 units. And this is the aggregated amount, which totaled, and the remarks is that the lodge, it's Makuga Lodge. It's not a high-rise 5-star hotel to appreciate costs. Per diem for evening meals for the overnight sessions, it's only 35. Rating, we're using dollar rate, which is equivalent to R1. It's 35 rands, 35 Namibian dollar or 35 rands for 2 days. For 13 units, it's 910. And this is for evening meals, for the evening meals for the days when they are out. The delegates are out. And then during the day, when they conduct the consultations, they'll be running out in the field, in the constituency. They'll need some lunch out, and the lunch out will be different because during the day it's hot and dry. The rate has to be 40 to also inculcate at least a beverage water for them. It's the budget for that for 2 days for the 13 personnel as far as this amount, which aggregated to 1040. And the remarks, this is for lunch package for consultation. Other costs we could not finish, but other costs definitely will include a bit of stationery, a bit of medication in case they are subjected to headaches, and all. Other costs include issues of COVID-19 items like sanitizers, as also compulsory face masks, and they have to have more than 2 because it's a long day sessions and it's far in the remote areas for hydration and all, as well as some hats to prevent them from the scorchy heat. So we couldn't cost that one due to time. We truly appreciate your lenience as we are going to finish this up. We thank you so much. Thank you.
Many thanks, English 2 group. Thank you for that presentation. Quick feedback from from the group members, from the other groups, as well as from the facilitators present.
I have no comment or any addition from my side unless the rest of the colleagues or the team.
Okay, thank you, Ajala.
Okay, quick comment from Hesbon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Hesbon.
Okay, so just maybe 2 or 3 points. One, under problem, it wasn't clear to me what the problem is. A number of things were mentioned Is it the high rate of gender-based violence or domestic violence? Is it the pregnancy, early pregnancy, or is it the femicide? So there were quite a number of things that came up under problem, and the way it was communicated, it wasn't very clear. So that could be something to look at, just to make sure that the problem is clear. And in the session we will be tackling today, that will be another chance to get us thinking about how to craft that. The risk also, in your mind, it is very clear when you talk about the environment, but it is important that you really communicate what you mean by the environment which is not conducive. So that needs to be very clear. I was surprised when I noted one of the bullets saying that there are no courts to deal with the issues that you are talking about. Is it that the courts are not there, or they are not functioning as expected? That may be something to think. If that is the reality, then that is okay. But if not, then it is important that we communicate the reality. And then in the budget, there were good items put there, except I didn't see the actual cost of the people who are working on the project. I could see per diem, all those other items, but what about your time when the staff that will be going out in the field? Don't you want to cost that? That is also something for us to think about. Those were just my quick comments for the group. Thank you. Over to Pierre.
Thank you, Hesbon, for that feedback. Do you have any other feedback? English 2, could you quickly address Hesbon's comments, and then we are going to move forward?
Thank you so much for the comments. We truly appreciate. We see where we've mingled up issues, but I want to start with the issue of the children's courts. Some countries, they don't have children's courts. It's subject to research, or even if they are there, they lack ideal or adequate facilities. That is one. Number two, with the issue of the problem statement, I'm sorry, yesterday I was not part of the group due to network, and I think we've mingled the wrong slide. We were redressed that we need to solely look into issues of gender-based violence and sexual domestic violence. And we then tied that with issues of early unintended pregnancies. That's the reason why we had to go to assess most of the schools with the education officials. So we were on in the thematic area, early unintended pregnancies mostly, which are also characterized by a high rate of illegal abortions. Thank you so much. So it's EP.
Okay, thank you, Jabulile. I think that feedback was very key, and when you get some time to continue working on your presentation, then there are things that you can at least look through. For example, the problem statement Hesbon has mentioned, it needs to be clear and concise. Somebody reading that should know that this is actually the problem. They can put their finger on it. Then the environment, what is it exactly about the environment? So probably you are applying to a donor who doesn't know your environment. So you need to explain your environment. What is it in the environment that is not conducive? And thank you also because you've addressed the other issue, which was about the children's court. So my additional comment to that, because you also need to work on this when you go back to your group, is that when you say some countries do not have children's courts, or the environment is not there, or the infrastructure, we are assuming here that you're talking about a specific country, and this could be Namibia, because I believe you're from Namibia. And so if you're talking about your country, it's about that country. So you should at least do some groundwork and some research before and find out what is the environment like in your country. And that is how you put that information on the application so that the person you are applying to, the donor, can read and see that you have actually done some groundwork. And if you explain, if there are no courts, then you should really state that there are no courts. If there are courts, but the infrastructure or the way they operate is not conducive for such kind of cases, then you say there are courts, but again, probably people taking court in their cases to those courts do not really, get justice, or the courts are not run professionally, or you now describe the issues and now what you're proposing to go and do. So because we are already into, so those are things that you can work through, but thank you for that presentation. I still understand that it is work in progress, and you have mentioned that you haven't finished. We'll have some time. What I can advise your group plus the French group is that we'll have a break after the first session, and it's a whole 30 minutes break. If you can be able to take 10 minutes, that if it's a tea break, and then maybe use the 20 minutes to still work on it, even though we'll still have some time later, but we can try to use that time to kind of brush out. Then for French group, apologies, you're not going to present now. We are already deep into the first session's time. And I also don't want to rush you, because I also understood that you are not able to finish up and to brush up on your presentation.
Nous sommes déjà prêts.
Okay. Okay, so all right, so let me just give them, I will ask Hesbon to allow me to get at least 5 minutes or less, maybe 4 minutes to Liva, present what you have, and then we'll get your quick feedback, and then in the next few minutes, then we are going to start the first session. Liva, welcome.
Merci beaucoup de m'avoir donné la parole. Christian, est-ce que tu peux projeter les diapos? Christian. Là, nous voulons commencer par donner le type d'évaluation. Oui, Christian est en train de partager l'écran. On va l'attendre un petit peu. Merci de votre patience. Merci, Christian. À propos d'évaluation et diffusion du projet, nous avons choisi comme type d'évaluation l'évaluation d'impact. Car d'après le texte que vous nous avez donné, on a choisi plutôt d'évaluer les impacts. Et deuxièmement, on va faire l'évaluation à partir des impacts pour déterminer l'efficacité du projet. Et qu'est-ce que nous allons faire alors pour le plan de diffusion? Premièrement, après sensibilisation et subvention du projet, on a comme résultat le retour des enfants à l'école, la reprise d'activité et de la vie quotidienne des adultes. C'est-à-dire on peut fonder une famille, etc. Suivant, Christian, s'il te plaît. Christian, suivant. Merci, Christian. Et concernant l'évaluation et division du projet, la suite, parce que là, on a dit petit A, Christian, petit B. Merci, Christian. Nous allons vous donner les évaluateurs et comment on a choisi. En étant rattaché à la région décentralisée, les responsables de l'éducation et les agents de terrain sont choisis pour évaluer les impacts du projet. Aussi, les autorités locales, députés, maires, chefs quartiers, directeurs, les enseignants sont des évaluateurs locaux car ils connaissent mieux la localité. Suivant, Christian. Et pour les outils de collecte de données, nous avons choisi comme les questionnaires, on fait porte-à-porte, vérification des fiches scolaires. Et pour les méthodes d'analyse, regroupement et classement des cas similaires comme l'identification des enfants nouvellement scolarisés et aussi les repérages des lieux nouvellement bâtis pour des nouvelles infrastructures. Et aussi, nous avons pensé que vaut mieux faire la mise à jour des fiches de recensement pour pouvoir avoir de fiables renseignements des habitants, non seulement pour la préparation de l'élection, mais surtout pour avoir des informations très fiables. Suivant, Christian. Christian. Et aussi, dernièrement, on va créer un groupe infographique. Mais là, les résultats acquis après évaluation montrent et définissent les efforts fournis et la qualité de changement engendré par le projet. Donc, ces résultats doivent être partagés, communiqués et diffusés aux parties prenantes et aux bailleurs de fonds. Et aussi, diffusés aux sites web, réseaux sociaux, communication médiatique, publication médiatique, etc. Et enfin, on va créer un propre infographique. Suivant, Christian. Christian. Oui, concernant la gestion des risques et durabilité, nous avons... Non. Merci. Évaluation des risques pour le projet. On pourrait se heurter à la réticence de la population locale, d'où l'importance de travailler avec les autorités civiles locales, chefs quartier, etc., comme nous avons bien mentionné tout à l'heure. Et comme la localité est éloignée, on a dit une partie reculée de la région décentralisée, il y a un risque au niveau de la sécurité des missionnaires. Donc, il faut prévoir travailler avec les autorités militaires sur place. Il y a aussi l'ineffabilité des renseignements près du bureau du quartier. Alors, comme je viens de vous dire, on doit faire une mise à jour des fiches de recensement. Et aussi l'insuffisance d'infrastructures due à l'effectif des enfants nouvellement scolarisés. Et le tableau du budget, Christian? Les facteurs à prendre en compte dans le plan de durabilité du projet. Là, premièrement, nous pensons à l'adhésion et implication de la population locale au projet en tant qu'acteur principal. Ceci explique la mission de suivi prévue pour janvier 2022. Deuxièmement, la stabilité des activités des parents. Troisièmement, construction des infrastructures comme écoles, maisons dures, bureaux, etc. Enfin, le recrutement et renforcement de capacité des enseignants. Et pour pouvoir réaliser tout cela, nous avons fait un budgétisation. Et là, concernant le carburant de véhicule, nous avons choisi comme voiture 4x4 pour navette, et parce qu'on a mentionné que la partie est reculée, c'est-à-dire peut-être enclavée, on ne sait pas très exactement parce qu'on n'a pas mentionné dans le texte. Alors, on a choisi la voiture 4x4 comme moyen de transport. Et là, nous avons utilisé le dollar américain, mais pas en arrière, mais on a converti l'arrière en dollar américain. Là aussi, l'hébergement, et on a choisi maison d'hôte parce que, comme reculé, peut-être il n'y a pas d'hôtel, une ou deux, 3 étoiles. Alors, on a choisi maison d'hôte. Et pour le per diem, repas et tout cela, toute charge des missionnaires, on a évalué à $1,685. Pour la réunion, on a besoin d'une salle pour faire le regroupement et le classement des données, comme je viens de vous dire tout à l'heure. Et là, on a besoin de cette salle pendant 20 jours, car nous avons choisi de faire l'évaluation d'impact pendant 25 jours pour avoir des résultats fiables. Et ce sont les sécurités, les militaires, par exemple les gendarmes, avec les personnels de la région, les agents de l'éducation de la région décentralisée, avec les agents de terrain, avec les autorités locales et tout cela. On a estimé à peu près 30 personnes. Mais les 30 personnes ne sont pas tous hébergés à la maison d'hôte, mais seulement les évaluateurs externes. Et dernièrement, autre frais, on a mis $50 pour les matériels d'écriture, bloc-notes, papier, rames de papier et tout cela, parce que on doit faire des questionnaires, on doit établir des fiches, etc. Alors, on a estimé à peu près $50. Alors, le total de la dépense, ce sera $3,728 et quelques. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Ja, kom ik erop vertrouwen. Hey, Ras.
Allô?
Thank you, Liva, for that presentation. I think given the time that you guys had to work, I'm impressed that you did quite a good job. Quick feedback. Thank you for that presentation.
Je vous remercie.
Group members or members from the other groups? Okay.
Okay, here is Hesbon. I hope I'm not cutting the line.
No, just go ahead.
Okay. So, yes, so let me just quickly go through a few things noted. I'm hearing the interpreter, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm wondering how...
Eric, maybe you need to switch to your French
channel.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. So let me just point out a few things. The group. Thank you. First of all, thank you for this group and the whole presentation. Good job. There are many positive things I could say, but I'm choosing to just point a few things here which you need to work on, and that should not mean that I'm ignoring the positives just because of time. So just remember that. Impact evaluation is what you identified as the major type of evaluation that you'll conduct. even as you think of impact evaluation, it is important to remember that you do not just wait till the end for you to be able to tell whether the project was efficient and all those elements. You also need to gather baseline, data for you to be able to quantify the change. And so I didn't hear more about monitoring and even the baseline evaluation. So just think of that and add that element. I think it will strengthen your proposal. I was impressed by your dissemination plan, especially when you identified the different audiences that you want to share the results with. That was very, very good. It means that you are thinking ahead, from the end coming back, which is good. Even as you think of that, also remember this concept of co-designing, whereby these stakeholders that you've identified, let them be part of the project early in the planning and all that, not at the end. That is when you now engage them and you want to disseminate, and they were not involved initially. So I'm not saying that is the case, but I didn't hear it, and maybe you probably talked about it earlier. If that is not the case, please consider the idea of co-designing. When you talked about the risk, my impression was that you clearly identified different risks, and not just identifying them, but also trying to think of how to mitigate. And overall, I think that was great. And then on sustainability, you discuss some elements which are okay. One thing that I would challenge the group to consider, when you think of sustainability, also think of what is existing. What, like for instance, the existing infrastructure. Is there a way you can leverage that? If yes, that would be a good way to think of sustainability, because you will not be doing something from scratch. And when you are out of the picture, if by any chance the existing infrastructure is leverageable, then that can be one of the things to consider when you are communicating to the funder regarding how the project will be sustained when the funding ends. So those are some quick points that I thought I would share with the group. Otherwise, thank you very much for the good job. Over to Peter.
Thank you, Hesbon. And thank you also for your feedback. Just one small feedback, 1 minute, so that I give you at 11:30 to start the next session. Is that in the budget, I know it's still not yet complete as you would want it to be. That is the French group. I'm sure in whichever country you are, there are some COVID regulations. So in terms of meetings, the people that you're meeting when you're doing your evaluation, the team also needs to have some things like sanitizers and masks, even though you have set aside the $50 that you mentioned that is for stationery. It would be important to put also what the $50 covers, so that people are clear that with these $50, we can have stationery and we can have as well as things to protect ourselves from COVID, be they masks, be they sanitizers, and those kind of things. So that's just something that you can think about when you're developing your, when you're completing your budget. Now, it is 11:30. We've taken at least half an hour for the presentation. I want to thank the two groups. We are still going to work on our presentations later, but for now, allow me to welcome Hesbon, who is going to take us through the first session today, which is about the title, the abstract, the cover letter, and the appendices. Karibu kila mtu. Welcome everyone. Hesbon, please take the reins.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Let me try to share my screen. All right, I hope my screen is visible. Peter, could you confirm for me? I don't want to assume.
It is, and I wanted someone else to confirm. I might be seeing it, but people are not seeing.
All right. Thanks. I hope it is.
I can see
Okay,
it, yes.
so we'll talk briefly about this session, which covers title, abstract, cover letter, and appendices. Now, if you think about it, when you look at any proposal, you will first see the title. And yet, when we structured this workshop, we did not start with the title. We started with the background, things like that, and now we are coming back to say we want the title. So that is how it works out in practice. We can keep changing the title as we continue writing, but then when we now package it and ready to send it, it comes fast. The same happens even with the scientific papers. That is how it works out. And again, immediately after the title is the abstract or the summary, and then followed by some cover letter if needed, and then appendices at the end. And the body of the proposal is in between there. So that is how it works out. So at the end of this session, my goal is that the participants will be able to prepare a good project title. They'll be able to prepare a project summary or abstract. They will be able to prepare a cover letter, and finally know which what to include in the appendices. Just give me 1 second. So sorry for that. So pretty much the same thing, and my objectives are my outline. So those 4 things are what we are going to focus on, and my goal is to be able to do this within the next 1 hour or less, now that Peter Rock has decided to chew my time. So let's work together and see how this will happen. Now let's start with the title page. Normally, the funding agency will tell you, they will let you know if there is need for a title page. And if that is the case, then what do you need to do? Follow their specifications if they provide that, their format. Normally, it will include the signature of key people in your organization. So maybe the CEO, or the department head, or the contracting officer. So just make sure that the relevant signatures are there. Okay. If your proposal is, if you're collaborating, let's say 2 or 3 or more organizations coming together to submit, then it is very, very important that you include the names of your collaborators, the relevant staff in the title page. Okay. One thing that some of us are tempted to do is to make the cover page pretty or beautiful, or that kind of thing. We are encouraged to look professional. So don't use like 7 different colors and all those different graphics just to make it look cute. No, let it be professional. So that should guide us. Make sure that it is very clear and free of any ambiguity. Don't make it cute. The title should be, and we will delve deeper into what is entailed when I mean clear. It should reflect the key ideas about the project. Somebody reading your title should be able to know the population you are addressing, should be able to know the locality or the context in which your project is based. All those should be communicated in one way or another in your title. If you are doing some intervention, somebody looking at your title should be able to know that this is the intervention that you are proposing. Okay. So, how does a winning title looks like? The key things that we all know, I'm just reminding us. Avoid jargons, use plain language, and keep it short, not very lengthy. Make sure that the most important words come first. We saw that when we were crafting the problem statement. We want the problem to really be in front, not coming much later. Use active verbs and avoid generic words. Avoid generic words and keep it short, meaning unnecessary words. Every word should earn its place in your title. If you can do without it and you are still able to communicate what the project is about, then that word is candidate for deletion. So make sure that all the words really put together communicate what you want to do. And if you can leave out some, the fewer, the better. And lastly, we are saying include agency-friendly keywords. When you read the title, rather the proposal, the call, you will be able to identify some keywords that capture the priority of the fund, what they really want. If you are able to weave those words in your title, then that is a good thing. And you don't force it. You just make sure that it makes sense to include them. Okay. I have a quick exercise here. We have two titles, 1 and 2. I would like you to point out the difference. You can put something in the chat box, or you can just unmute and tell us what the difference is. So look at those and then let me hear somebody or some people sharing what they can see as the difference.
Husband, you've seen Liva's answer on the chat. Huh?
I'm not seeing Lisa's answer.
No, not Lisa, Liva.
Or Liva.
Yes, she has said that the second statement is short but clearer.
Okay. Thank you. Title 2 is straight to the point, jealousy. Okay, one more. I'm still looking for something. Something that we talked about already. Okay, so let's continue. So I don't know if you are able to see the difference that we are pointing. Of course, the different dance style. Yeah, so Shonani, Kurasha, you hit it, but now it's okay. Let's continue. So the first title, the focus is on height. You see, tall African musicians, and then the rest of the things come, tall African musicians. The second title, the focus is on dance style preference. So let's step back. Let's not just go through this very quickly and then we forget what we are trying to make sure you understand. If, let's say this was your project, if the focus of your study was on height, height of the musicians, then you would start with that. It would be title 1 because you are talking about tall African musicians. The population of interest, musicians. What aspect? Their height. So, and then the dance style comes later. You are tying it to that. But you want to communicate to the funder that my project is about height of musicians, and I'm going to focus about musicians from DRC. I'm just giving an example. However, if the focus or the emphasis of your project was on dance style, then you would go with the second title, the dance style preferences of tall African musicians. So the emphasis there in the second title is not the height, but it is the dance style. So that is what I meant when we say start with what the project focus is on. Let it come out first. So the order of words, how you arrange them is very important, because what comes first, what somebody is going to read first, matters. And it's very simple, but it makes a difference. And you can see that the difference is communicated by the which one comes first. And so that is something I wanted to point out. Let's look at this one. Title 1, the systematic development of a local initiative to create a learning center for community education. Title 2, a local learning center for community education. You see that the second title, you use fewer words. The first one, many words. They are related, but now this one is shorter. But sometimes it may be shorter, but not clearer. So you have to ask yourself, are you going to sacrifice length at the expense of clarity? You have to weigh those things as you think of your title. Sometimes you may be forced to use a few more words just to make it clearer. If you go to the other extreme, where you are just focusing on the length, then you may lose on clarity. So play around with those two and come up with a very good title which communicates what your project is about. Okay, so these are the steps. And I don't know whether for the groups that have presented how you went about coming up with the title, but this is what we are proposing. You can try to do it in your group to see if you will be able to improve on your title. So first, just create a list of words or phrases that talks about your project, maybe something about how significant it is, the nature of the innovation that you are proposing, or the objective of the project. Those key phrases or words capturing those, put them just, in different parts like that. Then the next step, analyze them. And what we mean by analyzing them, are any of them, can you abbreviate some? For instance, if in your title you end up having HIV, do you really need to spell it out? If you don't need to, if you can abbreviate, that is a way to shorten it. You are starting to shorten now. Do you have some jargons in the list that you created? If there are, then look for synonym or words that can be put in place of those jargons. Because remember, we don't want to have jargons in our titles. Then the next step is now start arranging them to form some sentences, and if you are restricted by the number of characters or words, then that also bear that in mind. But basically, just try to arrange them and then reduce the list. Maybe there were 15, reduce the list to maybe 10. And again, that decision should be guided by which of the sentences are capturing your project better. If there are 15, you can rank them and then end up with 10, and then continue narrowing down. Now, the next step, share this list. You remember you are doing this individually. Now share the list with your collaborators. If it is a project that you are just doing in one institution, then it is just the team that is involved. If it is multiple institutions, then now share it with the different collaborators and ask them to pick the most informative title. As they do, if let's say you have a list of 8 or 10, ask them pick the top 3. Then you can then narrow down to those 3 and as a group decide on the most appropriate title. So it is not linear as I've put it, but if you can incorporate those steps in coming up with your title, it will be more informative title as opposed to just a title that is put there and may not really capture your project. So that is how what we propose to guide you in coming up with the title, which will then appear on the title page. Now, when we started, I think on Wednesday, we talked about problem statement, problem statement, goals, objectives, and all that. That statement is very important. Everything else depends on it, because if you don't have a problem, there's nothing to solve. You can't collect data, you can't do all these other things. And it appears normally in the background section of a proposal. Something that is closely related to the problem statement is the need statement. It speaks to the purpose. Now that there is this problem, what do we need to do? So that is the purpose or the goal of your project. And then there is also another statement called the process statement. This process statement speaks to what Flora covered when you went through the implementation plan. You see, process, implementation, or methods, depending on whether it is a research study. So that statement also is very important. And then impact statement, after you've gone through that process, you will have some outputs or outcomes. So there is that statement that speaks to what will we achieve. And then finally, sustainability, which again we have also talked about. So those 5 statements, if you can pull them together in a summarized form, they become your abstract. And in this session, we are going to see how to do that. We'll have some examples. So this is what we started with. I believe this slide you can remember when we were talking about problem statement. We gave examples of these 2 statements. Pregnant women often fail to deliver in safe, equipped healthcare institutions because they lack reliable and accessible transport. So you see, the color-coded text is really where the problem is. Reliability and accessibility of transport. That is the problem. But who is experiencing this problem? Pregnant women. And it results to that problem. In the second bullet, it is still the same thing, except now we bring the problem in front. And somebody would argue or agree with me that the second bullet is better crafted because somebody reading it is able to see the problem right away and then ask themselves who is experiencing this and all that. Those are the elements come after, but the problem is in front. So that is a better way to communicate or to craft the problem statement. Just a quick reminder, when I say this is the problem, it doesn't mean that this one sentence is all that there is when somebody is communicating the problem statement in the background section. No, but we need to have at least one sentence that captures the problem, and that is what we are focusing on. You remember in the background, you will give us what is known about this project or problem that I'm talking about, what has been done. All those are going to be there, but I'm just pulling the key sentence that speaks to the problem that is being addressed. Okay, the third bullet there, the current IV treatment, all that, and then the problem is it's painful, it has risk for new infection, and its cost. It is expensive. So those are the problems that we hope in this project will be addressed. The same thing with the fourth bullet is the cost and complexity. Now, need statement. I said that it is closely associated with the problem statement. Now that we know the problem, then what do we need to do? So when we talk of need, it speaks to the goal of the project, what you need to do to solve that problem. You should define your overarching statement of need, at least in one statement. And some people look at it as the overall objective of the study, what you need to do. You may have a multiple of them, but at least one overall objective. So in a nutshell, this is what you are requesting funding for. This is what is needed. This is what I need, and that's why I need money. So let it speak to what the funder goal or priority is. So I think that is clear. Let's just have some example to illustrate what we mean by a need statement. So let's read this. To help improve primary school children's reading levels, speed, and comprehension, we propose. So when you hear the word we propose, then it means this is what is needed. We propose a novel educational program that combines assistive reading, all that. So that is what is needed. That is what I need money for. That is why I'm asking you to finance, or rather to fund me. So I hope that is clear. Let's look at another one. Here, the person just goes straight to what is needed. We propose a novel use of existing resources by developing e-platform. So that is what is needed. Make sure in your project you are able to communicate what is needed. After telling us what the problem is, you need to tell us what is needed, what you are proposing as a solution. That is the need statement. Very, very important. Next is the process statement. And process statement in non-technical terms is basically what your execution plan is, how you are going to roll this out, okay? It summarizes your plan of study or implementation plan, as you remember. So a statement that speaks to how you will implement this. That is the implementation plan. It states how you'll accomplish the goals and objectives that you stated earlier, okay? And here are examples. So I'll let you just read to see whether this speak to some process, somebody implementing something. Let's see if that is communicated. So I'll give you a minute just to read them and think through, and let me hear if somebody has a question. Okay, so you are able to see when you are reading this statement that they speak to some implementation, what will be happening. So let's, for instance, the first one, we will develop a non-invasive nasal preparation of a protective antioxidant nanosome and test its efficacy in a group of 100 neonates with suspected brain asphyxia. So that is what they will be doing, how they will be implementing this study. The second one speaks to a research study. It will, they're saying a multi-center RCT of the combined educational intervention package will generate this kind of evidence among 10,000 primary school in both high and low income settings. You see, in the process statement, you are able to know the population, the intervention that they are talking about, and the number of participants, and where, the geography, all those are weaved in there. So that is the implementation. Now, after implementing, then you get some result. So maybe I had more examples. So we'll share the slides. We'll be able to see those examples. But the next thing is the impact. Now we are using impact generically. In other words, it can speak to output, it can speak to outcome, it can speak to impact. But that statement of your intended impact, what we intend to see, it reflects what success looks like for your project. So that is what you need to communicate when you are thinking of impact of your project. It may be in the short term, in the long term, or medium term, but the idea is what will success look like when you are done. So you need to state a singular way your project will produce some change, some positive change. And if you can quantify, the better. So there is a note. More and more funders are interested in seeing impact. They don't want to just spend their money and you will not be able to show what the money did. So you have to communicate how success will look like when their money has been spent. And that is very important. And I know that in different projects that we are working on, we've tried to quantify. I believe one of the groups that presented today spoke about the impact evaluation. That kind of thing is very, very important. Okay, so here are some examples of impact. The iCare program will increase. You see the direction of change, will increase institutional deliveries by providing cost-effective, accessible, and dependable transportation for these women in some locality. So you see, the funder reading this will be able to see, is this really a significant increase? Is it really impactful? Is it worth my money? Yes, they are able to decide based on how you communicate the impact. And you are not just saying this out of nowhere. You shall have done your homework and you know that if we do this, if we implement this innovation, then this is what we can achieve. The second bullet speaks to another impact. We expect to increase the community's hostel birth referral rate from this to that, 15 to 75%. You see, you are communicating this so that the funder can decide, is this really worth the money that you are asking? And so that is very important. You must have some kind of impact statement in your proposal. Finally, sustainability statement. Sustainability states how your intervention or your innovation, your project will sustain the outcomes that you just spoke about. So they may be health or development outcomes, whatever it is. How will that be sustained? Meaning it will still continue when you are out of the picture. Okay? Other ways to communicate sustainability is if you can demonstrate that your project, if implemented, it can still be applied broadly in other settings, then that speaks to sustainability, because it will not just be your district or your province, but it can be replicated elsewhere. It can also speak to financial and social sustainability. So look at sustainability broadly. And again, you remember I said that depending on the existing infrastructure, you may leverage that, and that speaks to sustainability again. So make sure that you convince the funder that the project will still continue when you are not in the picture, when the funding period ends. And here are some examples. You may be saying that a highly sensitive and specific diagnostic kit for group B streptococcal disease that is easy to use, affordable, and acceptable to practitioners. So that you are just pressing your intervention. But then now, next is when you bring in the sustainability. This kit would have wide application across low income settings dealing with the growing burden of disease. So you see, you are able to show that it will be widely applicable. And this is just a statement I'm pulling. It must have been supported by some other statement, but it's the one that clearly speaks to the sustainability element. This one also, inclusion from the start of National Ministry of Health and Medical Association will ensure required collaboration for continued testing and implementation. So you are telling this funder that the fact that I engage the Ministry of Health and this several medical associations, this will ensure that there is continued testing and implementation of your innovation. So that speaks to sustainability. It is very, very important that you assure the funder, and you just don't cook up things to claim that this is your sustainability statement. It should make sense. It should be grounded on the project implementation or methodology that you communicated earlier. So that is very, very important. So in summary, so these are just examples of sustainability. We will share the slides and you will see these and think about them. They can help you when you are thinking of yours. All right. This is a quick one and I will need people to participate. All I need is I present a statement like that and you tell me whether it is impact statement, process statement, sustainability statement, need statement, or problem statement. So the one that is appearing, can somebody tell me, just chat or unmute and say problem statement or whatever statement you think it is, just based on the wording. Hello? There's nobody making an attempt. We have been talking about these 5 statements and I just want to know if we are able to identify them if somebody asks you. I'm not seeing any.
Like,
yes, go ahead. Yes,
yeah, it looks like a problem statement because it is focusing on the. Yeah, I think it can be problem statement, the way I'm looking at it.
Okay, all right.
Sure.
All right, somebody else who can agree or disagree with Jailosi? Okay, I agree with him because I see a number of words there that point to problem. Inequities in access to specialist cancer care create something. It creates uncertainties about medical decisions. And what does that do? That disempower patients and limit their treatment options. So you see, problem is all you see in that sentence. And that speaks to the problem. We will now be able to tell what can be done about this problem. But you can see that this is a problem statement. All right. Very quickly, there is a statement that follows. And please, let's engage. So for those who are not able to read, I can read it. I mean, maybe it's not visible. We propose a novel use of existing resources by developing an e-platform for retrieving and sharing cancer patient data. That is what we propose. With a network of volunteers, specialist doctors to provide remote second opinion using a business model that charges affluent urban patients premium fees that fund rural consultations. That is what we propose as a solution to the problem. What is that based on what we covered? Is that a sustainability statement? Is that a need statement? Is that impact statement? What is it? Somebody saying process statement. Who else? Do you agree? I'll jump very quickly to what we covered before just to jog our mind. Let me just go back a little bit just to jog our mind when we talked about process statement and need statement. Okay, let's go. I'm going through this very quickly so that we are able to remember. What did we say about need statement? Okay. And we gave example. We propose something. We propose something. Okay. Then statement, a process statement is about execution plan. Okay. What you will do. And those were the example. We will develop this. This is a randomized control trial. What? Remember those? We will do this. So that is process, what you'll do. Then the impact is what the result would look like, what success would look like. At the end of it, this is what we will achieve. That is the impact. And you can even quantify it. And then finally, the sustainability, how it will be continuing when we are no longer in the picture. Okay. Now I'm back to where we were. So Generica is saying need statement. Who agrees with Generica or disagrees with her? Now we have need. Okay, so anyway, to cut it short, this Generica is right. This is a need. This is what we propose. Remember, that's why I went back so that you could see the wording and how the sequence. Once you present the problem, the next thing we want to hear is what you propose to be a solution, what you will do, to solve this problem. And that speaks to the need, what is needed, okay? And then once you have told us what is needed, then the next sentence, in one urban and one rural district in Kenya, we will develop an electronic system to retrieve and store cancer patient data. We will identify appropriate specialists, develop training modules, connect patients and doctor remotely to generate a second opinion. As you can see, those are process. Those are the things you will be doing now. That is now implementing your study. So that is process. Then after you've gone through the process, after you've implemented, the next statement we have, our pilot project will complete 50 consultations in the urban sector and 25 in the rural setting, demonstrating proof of concept of remote second opinion and generating evidence for further refinement of our revenue generation business model and e-platform. So that would be the impact or the outcome. You remember I said the impact is used generically. So that is what we will achieve. That is what we start. That's how success looks like for us. And then we say if successful, our solution can be translated to other conditions. So remember that language speaks to sustainability. Can it be replicated or transferred or applied elsewhere? That speaks to sustainability. And you see how they are lined up. You start with a problem and what is needed, how it is implemented, what we get at the end, and how we sustain it. if you have that lined up like that, that is what becomes your abstract. Some people refer to it as executive summary or just summary. If that is required, then that is what you provide as the abstract. And very, very important, because some people, that is all they read, and they decide whether they want to read the rest of your proposal. So if you package this really good, and you know, the way like the example we have just given, then your chances of being funded increases. All right. So in a summary, that becomes your abstract. So from today, if somebody asks you to provide an abstract of your proposal, you can do it, because we have gone through those slides and you know what elements need to go into the abstract. Very, very important. Okay. Cover letter. Mostly used in proposal to corporations and foundations. So it may not be applicable if depending on where your application is going. But if maybe for a corporation or a foundation, then they may ask you for a cover letter. A cover letter. So basically, it just introduces your institution to the funder. You know, it should assure the funder that the project has the support of your leadership. You know, because who will be signing this is maybe the CEO or ED, you know, the head of the institution or relevant office. So in that letter, you need to include a few things. First of all, let it be brief. You don't want 2-3 pages of a cover letter, preferably just 1 page. And you should not repeat information that is in the proposal, but more summarized. So what do we need to include in this letter? Basically, state what you are asking for. And your summary can help you craft that. State what you are asking for, how much, and for what. The answer to all those things are in the abstract. You may just add a few words, but they are there. So convey your strong understanding of the funder and how grant fulfills your funder's requirement. Alignment, we spoke about this the very first day, that whenever you are asking for funding or for money, make sure that whatever you are asking for coincides with the funder's priority. And Duncan mentioned something. In doing that, it doesn't mean that you are going to change either. Your vision as an institution allows you, whatever project you are proposing still is in line with your mission, your vision or mission. So it is upon you to show that that is the case, and also it is in line with the funder's priority, because the funder wants to know what is it that you are working on, not just for the small project, but even as an institution. Is this fulfilling the mission of the institution? Yes. Then it's even more convincing if it's just not fulfilling your institution's mission, but also that of the funder. Then it is that alignment is very, very important. So that is what you communicate in the cover letter. It's just an opportunity to convince the funder one more time, you know, before they even look at the title and the abstract, and also the fact that the institution leadership is supporting this. They are behind you, you know. So very, very briefly, some things that you need to avoid when you are writing your cover letter. Don't write too much. Again, brevity is very important. Don't use big words or, you know, that are going to confuse. No, make it very, very simple. Avoid making grammatical error. If you have errors, grammatical error in your cover letter, what does that speak to the kind of person you are or the team? They cannot even be able to notice that there are errors on the cover letter. Can I trust them with my money? You see, you would think like that. And so the funder obviously will also think the same. And you don't want to give them excuse for kicking out your proposal. Appendices, some of them are mandatory, others are optional. So just know if they ask for specific, you provide what they ask for. Now, speaking of appendices, what are some of these things that you think you could append with your proposal? You can type them or you can just unmute and tell me. Examples, please. Hello? Are you there? Peter Rock, it looks like I'm alone, but I'm not lonely.
Yes, you are not, you are alone where you are, but you are not lonely.
Okay, Genevieve, you were saying time frame.
Yeah.
I think you mean maybe work plan or something that communicates. Yes, project implementation plan. Okay. Okay, somebody else? Generica, CV, yes. Somebody else, please. What do you normally append, or if you've never been part of grant writing, what do you think based on what we have covered? Anything. Remember, when you are appending this, you are just providing additional information that you think is important to the funder when they are making a decision whether to fund your study or project or not. Relevant certification, thank you. If, let's say, you are an international research organization like APHRC, then we need something to show that you are duly registered and all that. You know, so that's just an example. If you are a university, there are relevant bodies. So supportive data, relevant certification. What else? Other people, please. I'm just reminding you that as we think of those appendices, remember that the person reviewing your proposal will not have all the time and luxury to look at many things. So think of things that you know, can be reviewed and will add weight to your proposal. Okay, thank you for those who have shared. Here are some examples. Some of them you have listed, you know, dissemination, plan, letter of support, timeline, all those. Okay. That is the end of this session. That is what I wanted to cover. And I thank you very much. I'll just pause if there is a question or a comment. There is a comment from Geraldine, but I don't understand it. So can somebody help me out? Yes, I can. Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you, Geraldina. So they are part of the proposal, but they are being added. So we saw the example, cover letter, all those other things. Financial statements, maybe they want to see the last year's you know, financial statement. Then those would be good to append. Okay, I'm not seeing any question. And I'll just spend a few minutes to talk about the exercise that you will do. Now, this will be part one or part of the exercise, or rather assignment that you will be doing. What I'll want you to do is just to prepare an executive summary or abstract of your project. And we know what goes in the abstract. these 5 elements. Make sure you capture them and just share with us. That is the assignment for this session. There's the next session. The presenter will also talk about the assignment, and put together that will be what you'll be working on. So thank you very much, Peter Rock. I tried to work with the time that you gave me. This session, I believe, was supposed to go up to 12:30, but we are finishing 6 minutes before 12:30. So I'm donating the 6 minutes for other uses, and I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hesbon. Thank you for that presentation. Very informative, and I think an easy to understand section. So we are slowly being cooked into this pot of knowledge. And I believe that when it comes to it, and we are now going into do the right kind of applications, we will go back to this lesson and remember the nuggets that we have learned. So thank you very much, Hesbon, and thank you for everyone else for your participation. Yes, we have 5 minutes to our break, and since there are no questions, I would just like to ask that we can take an early break. That's fine. But I would also like to ask if it's possible for the groups that are still working on their presentations, if you can decide to take less time, like 15 minutes, and then you come back and you go back to your groups. You can ask, I think the rooms are still open. What I'm not sure is whether people can just join. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, you can join, or you can ask us to take you to a particular, yes, okay, yes. So we have an invitation, guys, if you want to come back and to join and continue with your work, that is what I would suggest. But otherwise, you have earned this health break. Take some coffee, take some tea, take some juice, or whichever that works for you. And then we'll be back at 11. We'll be back at, for the second session, we'll be back at 12. So 35 minutes for your break. Does anyone have anything to say? Okay, if not, take your break. If you decide as a group to come back and accept that invitation to join a group and continue with your group work. Otherwise, we'll be with Sheena Kaira in the next session at 12. Thank you and enjoy your break. Not yet.
That's usually the problem I have. So on my end, it's in presentation mode, but you may not be seeing it in presentation mode. I sent it via email. Are you able to present?
Sure. Show me. So you're in presentation. Is there? Are you seeing two screens? The way you see the bigger screen and the next.
No, I'm not seeing two screens. Mine is just in. Yeah, in a simple presentation. Yes.
Okay.
So, Sheena, you can try and present. Just a second.
Okay.
I sent the updated one to Peter Rock.
Oh, you did. I haven't checked my email. Try try going to slideshow.
Yes, that's where I went. So on my side, is a proper slideshow.
Okay. So even now you can't go to slideshow because it's a full presentation mode on your side. However, it's still visible.
Okay, I've gone to slideshow.
From beginning at the end. Yes, there, the beginning. Say from beginning.
So are you able to see it now?
It hasn't changed.
Yeah, because on my end, it's in presentation mode.
Okay. Remove that use presenter view. There's a checkbox there. The one that says presenter view, if you could uncheck that.
Yeah, I've unchecked it.
Try now to put it now to presentation. Try to present. You have pulled it down, eh?
Yes, I have put in slideshow. I've put in presentation mode. Any changes from your end?
But you are not presenting right now.
I'm presenting. I'm not?
You're not. You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I don't know how that came off.
Try to reshare. Okay, now I can see. Now, okay, now use the bottom, use that one.
So can you see it in presentation mode?
I can see it, but it hasn't gotten into presentation mode. You have clicked it, eh?
Yes, no, so this is what I meant. Like I've been trying all possible ways, but people don't see the presentation mode when I present.
Okay.
So even I'm checking the right boxes and yeah, going through all those processes.
All right.
Yes.
That is fine. What I can do, I can download from this end and present. But in the meantime, colleagues, I believe you're back. So let me just get some confirmation so that we are not just alone here. Just unmute and say you're back.
I'm back.
I'm back.
Thank you. Thank you. Mercy. Okay. Sheena, in the meantime, merci. Sheena, in the meantime, you can be introducing yourself. I'm opening your PowerPoint. I'll present. Sheena, did you get that?
Yes. Thank you, Peter Rock, and welcome everyone. But some of us have already had lunch. We're in East Africa, so it's 1. I'm guessing the rest of the team has had breakfast. My name is Sheena Kaira. I'm the development manager at APHRC, and I'll take you through the session of engaging funders and submitting applications. So I switched on my video for introduction purposes, but my bandwidth may not behave properly throughout, so allow me to switch it off.
Sheena, just confirm what you can see on your end.
I can see a proper presentation.
Okay.
The first page.
That's great. So you are welcome to proceed.
Okay, thank you. I anticipate that this will be a participatory sharing session as opposed to me just talking on my own, because I can see that this is a very esteemed and experienced group and that everybody would have something to say on this topic, also building on what has already been covered in the week. So thank you very much, Peter Rock. As I shared earlier, yes, this will pretty much touch on engaging funders and just different methods we submit applications to major funders that I'll highlight later in this presentation. Now, what are the objectives of this session? As you'll see, yes, the first objective is for us to learn. I don't know, you lost the presentation slide, Peter Rock. Next slide.
Is it back?
Not on my end, but I can proceed.
Because I'm still sharing. Can you can see the, okay. Let me stop share, then reshare again.
Okay.
Is it back now?
Yes.
Okay.
So the objectives of this session is for us to learn from each other the art of identifying, qualifying, cultivating, and engaging funders. And the reason I break it down into these categories is because engaging funders is a whole cycle, it's a whole process. It's not just directly approaching funders and then asking for funding, but there's a process that will cover. And then the second objective is to appreciate the importance of comprehensive preparation and review of requirements prior to submitting applications. And then lastly, to learn submission techniques. Next slide, please. So basically, yes, the outline of my presentation will cover the funders' engagement lifecycle. We'll talk about timelines, deadlines, internal approvals, annexes, and attachments. And I know some of these things have been covered partly by my fellow facilitators. And then we'll touch on the submission and what happens after submission. Next slide, please. Yes, so as you'll see from this slide, the funder engagement cycle is multifaceted, as I shared earlier. And I'll go into details of these in the coming slides. The first point in the cycle is identification. The next one is qualification, and then cultivation, and then solicitation, which is the hub of what everything leads to. All the discussions we've had earlier in terms of the abstract that we prepare, the problem statement, the actual narrative, the proposal itself, the supporting documentation, all that is to position ourselves for solicitation. And then the solicitation life cycle itself has that planning process or phase. And then the ask is made, and then the funding is either awarded or declined or postponed. Next slide, please. Yes, so like I said, I'll touch on all the areas of the funding engagement lifecycle. The first one being identification. What is identification all about? I believe in the first session that you had, could have been the first or the second, Stella took you through some of the sources through which we can identify funding opportunities. Can I pause for a moment for us to refresh on some of these sources through which we're able to source for funding opportunities? So I'll open it up to the group to just remind us some of the things that may have been discussed in that session and some of the ways we can identify funding opportunities or funders. Over to the group. And anybody can start. Sorry, I'm not seeing the chat, so Peter, you can also let me know if there's anything being shared on the chat, but I encourage the team to open their mics in case anybody has something to say or contribute.
Okay, let me ask Lisa.
Yes, Peter.
Lisa,
yes.
Please monitor the chat. I'm also not able to see the chat because of the presentation.
Oh, all right, okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, so the question is what are some of the ways in which we can identify prospective funders and funding opportunities? And ignore some of the examples that I highlighted on this slide, because I know you could also have discussed broader things than this, but yeah, just share some of the examples.
Okay, there's a comment from Liva. She says from problems and justification. Is that right, Liva? Or is this a previous one?
Okay, Liva, perhaps you can open your mic to clarify or expound on your answer. Thank you.
Je vous remercie. Là, si je comprends très bien la question, on doit convaincre les bailleurs de fonds de nous donner, excusez-moi, okay. On doit convaincre les bailleurs de fonds de nous aider à réaliser le projet. Alors, nous devons bien identifier les problèmes et aussi pour justifier le problème, qu'on peut tirer une conclusion, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour bien, comment dirais-je, bien tenir le projet et surtout pour convaincre le bailleur de fonds de choisir le projet. Et c'est pourquoi j'ai écrit après les problèmes et la justification. Je ne sais pas si je suis dans le bain ou hors sujet, mais c'est comme ça que j'ai compris votre question et j'ai répondu. Il faut bien clarifier les problèmes et les justifier.
Thank you, Liva. That's a very good contribution, but I suppose that some of what I asked may have been lost in translation. For purposes of identification, at least for in alignment to the question I asked, I wanted to find out if you've covered some of the sources or ways through which we can find funding opportunities or prospective funders. I don't know if that is clear. So let me just proceed with what I had. I indicated that strategically aligned opportunities can be identified through aforementioned platforms. And aforementioned, I put that word deliberately because I meant in the earlier sessions, you may have discussed some platforms that publish funding opportunities or publish funders that we can think of engaging as an organization. And the reason I said strategically aligned opportunities is because when we're identifying opportunities on platforms or websites or other channels, we have to bear in mind that they have to be strategically aligned to our organization. Every organization has a strategic plan. Every organization has a mandate and a mission and a vision that they're trying to advance. So you cannot just look for any funding opportunities when you're trying to identify opportunities, but you look for opportunities that will serve the mission and the mandate of the organization. So yes, I indicated, yeah, we have platforms like DevX, we have platforms like Funds for NGOs, we have grants.gov, we have several platforms that publish funding opportunities. And we also have websites for funders, like USAID.gov. We have, initially it was DFID, but now it's FCDO, NIH, and just foundations, different foundations. Could be Hewlett, could be Packard Foundation, could be Bill and Melinda Gates. They also publish funding opportunities on their websites. And then another way is when we know our competitors, or when we know like-minded organizations, or organizations that are similar to our organizations, we can also review their websites to see who funds them. And if they're funding them, it means there's a chance that those same funders can also fund us, because we're advancing the same mission. So let me pause again there and ask if, now that I've explained a bit about the identification and how we go about it, if you have in mind other ways or other channels through which we can establish funding opportunities or identify funding opportunities. Over. Okay, so was that exhaustive? What I mentioned, does it cover all the possible channels and all the possibilities through which we can identify funding opportunities? As you'll see at the bottom of the screen, that another way is also looking at different country strategies from funders. We can look at also their annual reports. We can look at funders' funding life cycles, because usually funders have recurring cycles where, if an opportunity was published in April 2020, then they're likely to publish it again in April 2021. Also just looking at funders' reach. If certain funders fund in South Africa, they fund in Malawi, they fund in Namibia, then they're likely to be interested in your organization as well if you're in that particular country. So thank you very much. I will move on to the next phase of the funding life cycle. Peter Rock, you can move to the next slide, which is qualification. So qualification in simple terms would be when we identify funding opportunities that may be strategically aligned to our organization, we have to qualify those funding opportunities. And by qualify in this case, I mean we have to decide whether the opportunity is really a good fit for our organization. Because at face value, an opportunity may be strategically aligned to our organization, but there are finer details that have to be in place in order for us to decide whether we should apply for that particular opportunity, whether we should go ahead and build a relationship with a particular funder that we've identified. So there are so many factors that we have to consider, and there are so many factors that we have to think about in order for us to decide whether an opportunity is a good opportunity for our organization. So I'll give an example of APHRC. When we identify funding opportunities, we go through a process that we call a go or no go process. So this is what helps us qualify the funding opportunities that we've identified. And in this process, what we do is we develop what we call a go-no-go synopsis, which is basically a summary of the funding opportunity that we're interested in, the funding opportunity that we've identified. And in that synopsis, we highlight key things that may be of interest for management to decide whether this should be a go or it should not be a go, whether we should pursue it or we should not pursue it. And some of the things we highlight in the synopsis are funding history of the particular funder who's published the opportunity, and our chances of success. I'll give an example. Like for us, in the past 5 years, we've consistently applied for NIH funding. But when we apply as the lead applicant, we found that usually our chances of being funded have been slim. When we apply as a sub-applicant, we're sometimes funded. So management reached a decision to say, you know what, for NIH applications, it's time consuming and we put in a lot of effort, but it's usually in vain based on the history of success. And yes.
Just a second, as we sort out a translation matter here. I think the group in the Portuguese group are not, okay, thank you. Please go on, Sheena.
Okay, thank you. So from the history of success, last year management said, okay, let's put a pause in applying for NIH funding and re-strategize, or let's only apply for NIH funding if we feel that, for example, our chances for being awarded as lead are really, really clear. And the other reason for this was when you are awarded as a sub-applicant, you may not have a full overhead recovery, which is another thing that management would be concerned about. That whatever application you're applying for, or whatever proposal you're applying for, should also be able to cover your overhead as an institution fully, so that you're not subsidizing as an organization. So like for APHRC, and you may have gone through this in one of the sessions, like we have a minimum rate that is the ideal for us to recover in our funding, and this on average is 17%. So for funding opportunities that we've identified and that clearly stipulate that the overhead recovery may be less than 17%, sometimes management will say, no, we should not go for that opportunity. There are only exceptions when there's a possibility to recover the overhead through other budget line items, like through staff costs or other activities. So there are certain elements that they would also look at to say, okay, are we able to recover the costs if they're not meeting the need?
Hello,
Sheena,
Sheena.
did I lose you?
Yeah. I also cannot hear her from this end.
Okay. Can anyone hear Sheena?
No, Peter, okay, I think we lost her.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me try to get her. Just a few minutes, we sort out with her.
Hello, am I back?
Yes, Sheena, you're back.
You're right, Sheena.
Okay, sorry, I lost connection.
Sorry.
So I was saying some organizations will decide, okay, we'll only apply for a particular proposal if we have at least 1 month lead time. Anything less than 1 month, we should not put our resources in it, because then it will be a scanty application and it will be half-baked. And so yes, and as an institution or an entity or an organization, you can have your own thresholds for such things. And then other things that we would look at is whether we have adequate resources in-house or expertise to not only apply for the application, but to also implement if we're awarded, because certain things look exciting and certain things look achievable, but then you may not have the in-house resources or expertise that you need to carry out that particular project, or to apply even for that particular application. And then we also sometimes look at like our competitors, and we conduct a competitor analysis to gauge how that would affect our chances of being awarded. And there are times certain things, like there are times certain opportunities from your assessment of competitors, it is very clear that you are already at a disadvantage because, for example, you may be applying for USAID, and for that particular program, they've always awarded RTI, for example, and they're also applying, and their consortium seems very strong. And your consortium may be one that has no track record in that space, or no track record winning funds from USAID. So depending on your assessment, you could decide even at that level to not pursue a particular opportunity because of the competitor landscape. Next slide, please. I don't know if there are any questions so far, or whether I should just proceed.
Sorry, Sheena.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a problem with the Portuguese translation. There's someone, Geraldina, is asking. I don't know whether she's gotten sorted out.
Okay,
Lisa
may confirm.
Lisa can confirm. Lisa was handling that.
Oh, okay.
Lisa, was that sorted?
I'm in the Portuguese channel. And I can hear someone translating in Portuguese.
Okay.
So maybe it's been sorted.
Yes.
Let's hope it's been sorted. Okay. So yes, we've identified funders, prospective funders for our organization. We've qualified a particular funder. The next step may be cultivation. And let me just comment that some of these steps may not necessarily go in a sequential order. Some of them may be overlapping. Yeah, this is just to show the major elements that go into the funder engagement lifecycle. And cultivation is, for me, the gist of engagement, because cultivation pretty much is about building relationships with funders. And also in this same mix, I'll include partners, strategic partners who can help grow our organization in terms of funding. So cultivation can happen in different ways. Cultivation can happen through email introductions, where you reach out to program officers from the fund organizations, or you reach out to the contact people provided for the organizations, and then introduce your areas of work, introduce your expertise, introduce what you do, your technical competencies, sell yourselves as an organization, share your capacity statements with the funders. And then you could also ask for meetings. Before COVID, these were usually in-person meetings, but now I would say that meetings have become easier now that we've gone virtual. So you could ask for meetings via Zoom, via Microsoft Teams, via Google Hangouts, depending on the preferred channel of the funders or the partners that you'd want to meet with. Yeah, previously we also used to leverage networking platforms like conferences. Like for us, usually would have researchers travel and attend a number of conferences to share some of the research conducted, some of the outputs, some of the ideas, and just make different presentations relevant to the particular conference. But now that this has been minimized as well, some of the ways that you can network is through webinars. We've seen that this has been a growing development in the recent past, where a lot of organizations are organizing webinars to share some of their findings and some of the work that they've carried out. The idea of building relationships with funders is that, yes, you would position yourselves, make yourself visible as an organization or as an entity to the funders, but also they could now start tapping into your intel, they could tap into your expertise to shape their cause. So most funders do not develop funding calls in a vacuum. They rely on development professionals, they rely on organizations that are already in the space to provide input, to give them information that now shapes the call. And imagine if you've been part of the process, then there's a high likelihood that you'd also be the implementer of choice once they release the funding opportunity. So yeah, building relationships with funders is a very key phase and element of the funding engagement lifecycle. Next slide, please. Yes, so solicitation is the ask itself. Solicitation is now for most organizations and most entities where we apply for proposals. It's mostly done through written proposals. For online donation, solicitation can be direct, just sharing with potential donors the cause you're trying to advance, and then they donate in their individual capacities. Yeah, so this is mainly for individual donations, but for funders, formal funders, solicitation is through proposals normally. And these come in different forms, as you may have covered in the previous sessions. They could be invited proposals if you've already established relationships with the funders. They could just single you out as an organization to apply for a proposal. They could be competitive proposals where the funders would publish these on their websites, and then they'll also trickle down to other platforms like DevX that will publish them, and they're open to everybody to apply. So yeah, some of them come as requests for applications, requests for proposals. Some are called APS, like in terms of USAID. Yeah, they have different terms, but then yeah, the competitive ones come in many shapes and forms. But before we proceed to the next slide, let me open up this discussion to the group to share what could possibly go wrong in the process of solicitation, in the process of writing proposals, in the process of everything that happens from the time you're planning for a proposal to actually developing it, to submitting it. Let me hear from a few people what could possibly go wrong. Over.
And Sheena, just to inform you that the issue on the French, not the French, the Portuguese translation was sorted.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. So colleagues, you can use the chat. You can use the chat box to answer Sheena's question, or you can unmute and talk.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong. So let's just share for purposes of interaction what people have in mind. One of the things that I'd mentioned is, okay, if you do not have enough time, you may end up working on the technical proposal and then forgetting to look at the supporting documentation. That's just one example of what could go wrong. And so you submit an application that does not meet all the requirements. Any other things that could go wrong?
Sheena, we have a comment here from Jailosi.
Yes.
Yeah, ambiguous proposals.
Yes, perhaps if he doesn't mind, he can unmute. Jailosi, you can unmute and expound on your answer.
Yeah, the thing is, if the proposal is not direct on the problem to be addressed, so the funder cannot be able to depict what you want him or her to fund the project for that problem to be addressed. So the issue can be much on the problem statement if it is not giving out the little sense of the problem or that is to be addressed. So that can also make this solicitation process to go wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jailosi. That's a very good explanation and answer. And I remember in the earlier session, Hezbon shared how it's important to highlight what your problem is, to make it clear. And this should also sometimes be clearly stipulated in the abstract, because reviewers at times will just look at the abstract, and if the problem is not clearly stipulated or aligned to their call, then they may disregard it. Any other thing that could go wrong in the process that I can call it the proposal development process and the whole process leading to submission?
Network failure.
Come again?
Network failure or power failure.
Yes, you can expound on it. Thank you.
You might have planned to submit your proposal, but you lose power, or due to even the lost power, you can lose your network connectivity, and therefore you are not able to meet the deadline if you're submitting it too close to the deadline. Over.
Yes, that is actually a very good contribution as well. And that is why ideally it's encouraged that you prepare your proposals and plan to submit at least one day ahead of the deadline. Because if you leave things to the last minute, sometimes you find that you experience technical difficulties that eventually prohibit you from submitting. And the submissions, the online submissions are usually programmed to just cut off any submissions that come a minute after the deadline, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's a programmed system. So yes, it's important to allow for submitting applications ahead of the deadline. Yes.
I was just going to say about the technical challenges out of an experience where we once had when submitting an application. And then on the last day, the network, it was supposed to be via a portal. And on the last day, the portal just would not go through. It went down completely until the last couple of minutes before the deadline. And there was no extension. But luckily, one of the team had, like putting in some information beforehand, such that now when it was, it was bringing these challenges, it was easier. Those few minutes were actually very important in just putting the last bit that was pending. So that one can also, that one was a cause of scare at that last hour after working so hard and then seeing the deadline passing you just like that.
Imagine. There are times people even cry because It's something there's nothing you can do about it. And you brought up a good point of, yeah, you may actually have a bit of time leading to the submission time, but then the portal fails, and it may not necessarily be network failure. It could be also their system or their portal failing. And if you had allowed at least 1 day lead time for the submission, then you're able to call them or to notify them. But if it's too close to the actual deadline time, it may be difficult to engage them or call them or notify them that the portal is not working. Okay, any other 2 or 3 things that could go wrong? By the way, Peter, I'm not sure how much time I have. Am I supposed to end in 16 minutes or in 46 minutes?
So what time is it now? It's 12, it's 5 minutes. Okay, if I talk about EAT time by 2:30.
Okay, all right.
So 15 minutes, maybe more for presentation and the question and answer. So all this time is yours. So for
okay.
45 minutes. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. You may move on to the next slide if there are no more contributions.
Okay.
So here
Excusez-moi, est-ce que je peux parler?
Yes, Liva.
Oui, merci. Oui. Là, je veux faire une petite contribution concernant votre question. Ça peut risquer aussi notre demande si on ne fait pas vraiment attention à la table des matières par rapport au corps du texte. Je veux dire, le projet, peut-être c'est pas en cohérence, c'est incohérent et ce sera difficile pour le bailleur de voir, OK, vous parlez ceci, dans quelle page et tout cela. Mais peut-être c'est un petit problème, mais c'est très important de faire attention. Merci.
Yes, great point, Liva. I think it really is part of critically reviewing the requirements of the call and making sure that you have taken note of what the funder, like what format the funder wants, if that is stipulated, like you said, just the table of contents comprising everything that you must cover, and also supporting documentation that will be needed. So it's really important to review everything comprehensively so that you do not miss out on any detail. And this slide sort of explains some of the ways we can mitigate these things that we mentioned that may go wrong. And the first one is if we allow ourselves ample time for writing the fund, for applying or for developing the proposal, ample time for writing, then usually you're able to comprehensively review the requirements, you're able to put in a good application, and you're able to mitigate for other things that you may easily forget if you do not have enough time. Also, if you have a good proposal development team, and where applicable, if you have partners from the start, and if you've clarified everybody's roles and responsibilities from the start, that is also helpful. So for example, like at APHRC, we make sure from the start a grants officer is involved, a budget person, and maybe a policy engagement person, and then the technical team. And then everybody has an area that they'll focus on, like the grants officer will be responsible for establishing a tracking system that will have a highlight of things that are needed for that particular opportunity. So if the opportunity requires CVs, if it requires a capacity statement, if it requires a registration certificate, letters of support, then they'll have that in some form of database that they can be taking once that particular item has been collected or has been met or has been produced or developed. And then the finance person would already be looking at the budgeting template of the particular funder where this is applicable as well, and then make sure that even as the team is writing the activities and as the team is developing the proposal, that they're in alignment with how the budget will be prepared, and that also that the budget, he or she as the accountant is able to track the activities and then interpret those into a budgetary presentation. And then partners, it's also important if you're going to work with partners that you start working with them early so that they're also able to develop their letters of support where there's need for them to develop their letters of support, to provide their CVs or their administrative documents. And you know how certain partners would be from organizations that have a lot of bureaucracies, and where, for example, if it's a university, only the vice chancellor can sign certain documents. So those processes need to start early so that, they don't affect your timelines. And then the last point I indicated here is that we should be aware of the timelines, and this is key. And for each timeline or for each component, for the team members that we have and the roles and responsibilities we've assigned to them, it helps to also give them individual deadlines for which to meet their particular items. And then for the overall proposal, it's important to set a deadline that's ahead of the funder's deadline to allow for contingency of anything going wrong. Next slide, please. Yes. So this is a reminder that some applications are complex, whereas others are simpler and more manageable. And it's important for us to treat opportunities differently and to know what we're dealing with. And the reason I say this is because, for example, I will give the case of federal funding, like US funding. And this could be USAID, this could be NIH, this could be other federal related funding. They are usually complex because you submit through portals where you're not just submitting the application, but they're also looking at other items that I'll discuss on a bit later, like whether you have a DANS number, which is the Data Universal Numbering System, and it's a unique identifier for vendors and organizations that apply for federal funding, whether you have a system for award management renewed to date, and whether for some of these, whether you have the error common numbers that they require. So there are a number of administrative things that they would require, and you have to be mindful of such complex funders. Some are simpler in the sense that they're only calling for a technical proposal. And once you develop that technical proposal, you submit via an email. So with some of these, you only need to focus on the technical submission. So it's important to bear this in mind. And then, I think this was just to emphasize again the importance of not waiting until the last minute to review what is needed, to review even the supporting documentation or the administrative documentation that would be needed. And the reason I say this is because sometimes teams will be like, no, the hub of the application is the technical proposal. Let's make sure that we have that in place, and then we can look at what is needed administratively later. That could be a mistake because you'd find that you've produced a very good proposal technically and a good budget. But you find at the time of submission that perhaps some federal related registration needed renewing. And when you start that process, you realize it will take 2 to 3 weeks. It's not a one-day thing. And there's no way you can submit that proposal with that particular administrative issue in place. So even your beautiful technical proposal at that point would have been in vain. So yeah, it's important to not wait until the last minute for any component at all. And it's important to read all documents provided in the call for proposal. Not just focusing on the main document that has the application details, but if there's supporting documentation that the funder has provided, then they've provided that supporting documentation for a reason. So it's important to read all the documents. And then it's also important to familiarize yourself with the proceedings. If you're going to submit via a portal, it's important to have someone test that portal in good time so that they become familiar with it, they know how to navigate it, because it could also require IT support, it could require certain applications that you may not have in your own laptop. So just making sure that you familiarized yourself with the portals or the proceedings in good time is very important. It's important to respect templates and length limitations. If they're providing for a maximum number of words for a particular session, then you make sure you're within that limit, and you make sure that you're using the right templates that will allow the submission. And then it's important to coordinate with partners in good time, ideally from the start, as I shared earlier, because sometimes of also the bureaucratic processes that come with other organizations. And then have someone check the completeness and quality of your application forms and your documents. We may be confident in our writing skills. Maybe as the lead writer, one may be confident to say, I have very wide experience doing this, and so therefore, if I write and then I review it myself, then it's good. But it always helps to have a second reviewer or a second person looking at things, because they'll look at them from a different perspective, and they will obviously notice things that you may not notice, especially also because when you go over your document several times and you're familiar with your own document, then you could easily miss things that could be picked by another person. Next document, please. Next slide. Yes, before I expand a bit on these highlighted major donors, because I was thinking of, okay, yes, it's important for us to perhaps sample a few major donors that a number of organizations apply for and discuss them a bit more in depth. But before I go into this, let me hear from the group if there are any questions or any comments this far. So should I assume that it's been clear? My presentation has been clear and there are no questions yet?
Hello?
Yes, please.
Alô? Sim, muito boa tarde. É um prazer enorme estar a participar desta formação. De facto, a apresentação da China foi muito clara e no slide passado eu, em algum momento, acabei me revendo, porque, vezes sem conta, nós temos este hábito de procrastinar, sempre deixar as coisas para a última hora. Então é importante, sim, trabalharmos em equipe para que e o outro possa nos alertar o quão rápido ou o quão devagar nós estamos a andar. Muitos parabéns à China, a apresentação dela está muito clara, está bem colocada e é atual, e vale a pena mesmo continuar a acompanhar. Muito obrigada.
Thank you, Liva. This is well noted. Yes. So I'll touch a bit on USAID. I'll touch a bit on FCDO, which was formerly DFID, a bit on IDRC, and a bit on NIH. USAID usually publishes its calls in 2 phases. So the first stage of application would call for applicants to submit concept papers, and concept papers are usually very brief. Usually they would provide for a maximum of 5 pages. And then you also share a high-level budget, which would be a very, very rough budget with no detailed activities, but just an outline of the funding amount that you anticipate your concept would need. So yeah, normally they allow for 30 days after you've submitted your application to review and then share the feedback as to whether you're proceeding to the next stage. And increasingly, for the second stage, they have started involving themselves with the potential applicants. And by this, I mean, for the second stage of submitting a full application, they are doing this through what they call a co-creation process, where you're able to engage with them when you're developing the proposal. You're able to ask questions, you're able to seek clarification from the instructions they provided. You sometimes even have workshops with them where you actually are able to conduct in dialogue and share the ideas that you're thinking of, and then they'll let you know this idea actually can be enhanced this way, or why don't you go this route? So it's a proper dialogue process that makes the application exercise a bit more seamless and a bit more exciting. And at the same time, for them also, they're able to get input from different partners and different applicants on how best they can shape the program they're thinking of before now the applicants submit their full proposals. So for the second phase of developing the full application, they share detailed instructions, and on average, the full application involves us developing a proposal that's a maximum of 20 pages. But then this is what includes all the components that have been covered in this session. So it could have the title, it could have an abstract. Problem statement is a must. You are supposed to highlight your theory of change. You're supposed to highlight your goals, your objectives and outcomes, a description of your activities, staffing and management plan, and they take this very seriously. We've had proposals being declined just on the basis that the staffing and management plan didn't make sense. So we may have been scored highly on the technical components, but perhaps the CV we provided for a particular technical lead was falling short of what they anticipated. So they take the staffing seriously. And this is why you also see that some organizations advertise for positions that they feel may not be available in-house. They advertise them ahead of being awarded, but then they'll actually put the disclaimer that this is subject to funding, simply because they want to have the right CVs in place even as they're submitting the proposals. So yeah, they take the staffing and key personnel seriously. And then there is also usually a budget, a comprehensive budget at this stage that is complete with a narrative expounding the activities, how you've budgeted on each activity. And then the submission is nowadays, what I've noticed is twofold. There are times they'll just provide an email address where you can submit the concept paper, or where you can submit the full application. But then there are times, depending on the office or depending on the department, there are times that you would still need to submit your application through a portal. And normally federal funding opportunities are submitted through what we call grants.gov portal. But then, like I said, you have to make sure also that you have your dance number, you have your system for award management updated. FCDO, as many of you may be aware, yes, is now the government agency for UK. So this was previously DFID, but maybe we shouldn't be saying this was previously DFID, because it became FCDO because it merged two departments or agencies. There was the Foreign Commonwealth Office, and then there was the DFID, Department for International Funding Agency. And so now these two came together and formed what they're now calling FCDO, which in full stands for Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. And it seems like they're still trying to establish some terms of operation and requirements and other things, but as they're finding their feet, for now they're still borrowing heavily from how DFID was operating. And usually the way DFID operates is it works with what they normally call suppliers. So even when you're an organization applying for an opportunity, you're viewed from a commercial perspective, you're viewed as a supplier, and you have to be registered in their supplier database. So when they advertise for funding, sometimes they'll also have like a one-stage application, but other times they'll have a two-stage application. And the two-stage application starts with what we call the SSQ stage, which is the sorry, there was a bit of noise on my side. So they'll start with a standard selection questionnaire stage, where pretty much they're asking for supplier information and a demonstration of how you're compliant to their regulations. So it's sort of like a due diligence stage where you share a number of annexes related to your registration as an organization, and your governance structures, your economic and financial standing. And then you also highlight your technical and financial abilities. But at this stage, you also show your policies and how you're compliant to issues of safeguarding and other ethical considerations. And then when they review this first application, the SSQ, and they're satisfied, you move on to the full application stage, which they call invitation to tender. Now where you're tendering for the opportunity. And here you submit your full technical and commercial proposal. And this also includes an executive summary. But then it, obviously has the comprehensive narrative, but it also has what they call the commercial proposal, which is the budget. And then you submit this through the supplier portal through which you register as an organization. Yes. IDRC, usually the call for proposals require are like they have templates that you meet or that you follow, and you're able to submit them seamlessly through an email address that they've provided. So the technical proposal could comprise a number of components, from a summary to narrative, and then a breakdown of the budget. For them, they're also usually keen on the qualifications of the key personnel that will be involved, and then their proposal or the proposal that you develop and is also authorized signatory of your organization. And then you're able to submit this through the email address they've provided. One thing I like about IDRC is also if you've cultivated relationships with them, their form of proposal development takes a co-creation angle, where once you share your proposal, you easily receive feedback from the program officer telling you the areas that you can amend to make it a winning proposal, and then you resubmit. But there's a proper dialogue that goes on and back to forth communication, where you can there's the chance to enhance your proposal or to make corrections once they receive what they regard as the draft proposal before you submit the full application. And then for NIH, I can maybe share a bit on this through the next slides. Next slide, please. Yes. So NIH, just like most US grants, requires going through a registrations process where you make sure that you're compliant in terms of what they would want you to complete as an institution or as an entity. Yeah, and this could include what they call ERA commons, where the lead applicant is supposed to have a unique identifier, and so are the key personnel in the team. And there's a way that there's an authorized representative who can perform certain duties, but then they can also delegate some duties to others. The reason I said it's important to familiarize yourself with these things is, and the reason I chose to delve into one of the funders is just to show that it's not just about submitting the technical proposal, but then there could be regulations that you would need to. Next slide, please. Yes. So here, Peter Rock, you can be clicking one by one. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that for USAID, for NIH and other federal funding, your organization would need to have a DANS number because this provides a unique number to the organizations that are applying or that are engaging in business with US. And this is like a universal numbering system that allows for this. And then you need to be registered in System for Award Management, which is something that is needed if you're to do business with the US. And this one requires annual renewal. The DANS number is a once-off. Once you have it, you don't need to renew it. But the SAM registration is a process you have to renew every year. And this is one process that sometimes can take 2 to 3 weeks when you start it. And so it's why I mentioned that it's important to make sure, even as you're starting an application, that your SAM is renewed. or if you do not have it, that you start about to do anything with the US. Next, please. And grants.gov then would be the website that you would submit the NIH application or other applications if they've not provided for email addresses, but this is the official website or portal through which we submit applications to the US government. And then Error Commons is also an identifier required to do business with NIH, and it comes in different categories, as you'll see in the next slide. Okay, so this was just a snapshot of how the NIH portal would look like. And it would call for the basic information of your institution or your entity, from the name to the contact information, a brief about the institution, and any policies to do with your indirect cost recovery. On this same slide, if you click again, Peter Rock. Yeah, so this is just to show, this one is an old snapshot, but for this institution, as you can see down there, when you log into the portal and you input your DANS number, you're able to see when your SAM registration is expiring. Like for instance, for us, we know for this year as APHRC, our SAM registration will expire in September. So if we were to log into this portal, then we'd also see, once we input our DANS number, that our SAM registration will expire in September 2021. So yeah, this is also just to show how this would appear for a particular organization. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we've already shared about grants.gov as being the official website through which we submit applications to the US government agencies. And for this, they only allow for one authorized organization representative who's registered within the system and through which there are credentials you can submit. And then for Error Commons, there are actually details on the portal. They're user-friendly that show how at least one signing official can register for this. And then if there's a principal director or principal investigator, and then if it's a multi-project application and the different leads for different components, they also need to have this, depending on the nature of the application. If it's a sponsor on a fellowship, the prospective recipient also needs to register for this, and many others, but yeah, these are usually explained on the portal. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is a bit outdated because now they've simplified the system a bit in terms of the submission process. And once you're done with all the requirements on the portal and you've completed also not only the technical details, but also you've met all the administrative details, then you submit the application through grants.gov. Initially, there were different layers where you needed to go through a platform that was called Assist, and that would channel the application to grants.gov. Or there were times you could download the forms, complete them offline, and then share them. There was a workspace, but now there's a direct way of just uploading the applications and then routing them to grants.gov that eventually routes the applications to NIH. Next slide, please. Yes. So as we're submitting, once we've gone through the portals, once we've gone through the requirements of the opportunity, or once we feel confident that everything is in place, there's some checkpoints, and this could be reminders because we've already gone through some of these things. So you just make sure that you've verified all required registrations and that all registrations are in place, that you've verified the submission method and you're doing it in the right way, that the application forms have been prepared as per the announcement and as per the instructions that were shared, and that if you're submitting through grants.gov or similar websites, I didn't touch on European Commission, but it also has its own requirements, and it has a platform that you have to be familiar with, and you have to also make sure that registrations are up to date. But yeah, for purposes of time, I decided to focus on the US. I know the European submissions also have their requirements, but this gives us the picture that certain applications are not just about developing the technical proposal and submitting, but they are complex in the sense that you have to be aware of these other requirements. So you have the authorized organization representative who would submit the application. And then once you make the submission, different funders provide feedback differently, and some do not provide feedback at all. So where funders have provided feedback and they've provided details of how they scored you, and they've actually confirmed your application as successful, that is good, because then you move on to the contracting stage, which was the phase, the fifth phase in the funder engagement lifecycle of stewardship, where now you make sure that you're taking care of their resources and properly, and you're compliant to now their contractual terms. But where now they provide feedback as unsuccessful, if they've given detailed scoring and shown and highlighted how they scored you, that is your chance to use that to position yourself for the next cycle funding and to improve on the application depending on the feedback. Like I said, most funders, most of these calls come recurringly, and they may come at the same, around the same period every year as before. So yes, it's helpful. Where they've not provided feedback, you could follow up. This is usually easy if you had submitted via an email address, because then that allows you to easily write the same email and to just ask if they could give feedback. And so some will say, yeah, we're still reviewing, we'll provide feedback later, but others may provide the feedback to say, oh yes, sorry, we didn't bother to communicate because you were unsuccessful. Others will say, yes, there's been delay internally in terms of review, or they'll explain why they have not yet reverted. And then where you had submitted via a portal, it may be difficult to follow up because sometimes there's no indication of any email address that you can contact. And if you're to send or request for feedback to a generic email address, that may be in vain, as you may not receive any feedback. So for some, you just wait and hope that they'll provide feedback later. What we do at APHRC is sometimes we normally allow for a maximum of 1 year and consider an opportunity as not successful if we've not received any feedback at all for the application that we've made. But then for a few funders, and I'll still also highlight NIH, we sometimes leave it open-ended because we've had cases where they've given feedback even after 2 years to show us whether we were successful or not, whether our consortium was successful or not. So there are a few, and this could be 5% of our funders that we leave open-ended, but for most we have a cutoff point. And yeah, if the feedback is negative, I know sometimes this can be demotivating because of all the energy that goes into this process. but we encourage that we take even negative feedback positively, because that allows you to grow as a development professional and to improve yourself and to position yourself better for the next funding. I think this was the last slide. Let me see the next one. Yes, so I'll open up the floor for questions. Over.
Thank you, Sheena. Colleagues, we welcome questions, comments, or any feedback you have. Any question, observation, comment? It seems your presentation was very clear, Sheena. No one has a question or a clarification. Probably you could explain to us a little about the exercise.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if this exercise is off, because when I developed it, I assumed that the groups have been working on some opportunities that they would want to apply for. So the exercise says for the opportunities that the groups have identified, they should describe all the steps taken from identification to qualification to building relevant partnerships where applicable, to cultivation if applicable, and then the solicitation or submission process that they envision for the application.
Okay, they've been working on, they've been building on a template since we started. So I think there's a way that what they have learned today can actually be input into this. So I think there's a way that they can work through this. Yeah.
Yes, it can be imaginative as well. So yeah.
Yes, we are working with a very creative and innovative group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peter Rock. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think, sorry, can you still go back to the previous slide?
Okay.
The assignment slide, yeah. So I think, as Sheena said, the relevant elements can still be, can still guide the different groups in this exercise. They may not have to do all, all these elements, but where applicable, as Sheena said, we still can benefit from this exercise if we try to do it as a group. So I agree with you, and I just wanted to emphasize that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hesbon, for that clarification. There's a comment from Geraldina. Can I get an interpreter to interpret? Yes. Sheena, did you get that question?
No, may he come again? certain situations as the parliament.
Okay.
Okay, yes, the question is clear. So this is part of the reviewing process of the funding instructions that are published. Usually, most funders will clearly state the eligibility criteria, and sometimes they'll say government agencies are not eligible, but sometimes it's clear that they're eligible. And where it's not clear, if there's a contact information, then we seek clarification from the start. But to answer your question more simply, there are certain applications, yes, that even parliamentary entities can apply for. It just depends on the eligibility criteria of the particular call. But if my colleagues have anything to add, they may add as well.
Yeah, Sheena, you have answered that question ably. In fact, there are some calls that you can see where some people are just looking to work with government. So other entities, for example, NGOs are not eligible. There are also other calls that governments are not eligible, but NGOs are eligible. So it just depends on the kind of a model that the funder has chosen. So yes, parliaments can actually submit applications such as those to where they meet the eligibility criteria.
Sure, thank you.
Any other question? Going once, going twice, and going thrice. Let me end the slideshow. Screen sharing has stopped. Okay, that's great. You're welcome, Geraldina. Also, thank you. Okay, there are comments for thank you, Sheena, from Owen. Geraldina says muito obrigada, Sheena.
Thank you.
You also say obrigado. You come from South Africa, right? South African region.
You mean Southern Africa? Yes, the Southern African region. We're neighbors with Mozambique, but I don't know Portuguese. Obrigado.
Okay, thank you, Sheena. So we are right on time. Okay, my machine is just misbehaving a little. Just give me a second to sort it out. Yes, so we are right on time, colleagues. It's 1:30 p.m. or 1:32, and I want to, now that there are no further questions that I can see on the chat and no one is asking on voice, so I want to appreciate every one of you for being here for the two sessions that we've had. And now we go back to a break. So it's a health break or what we call the lunch break, plus the group assignments. I just want to confirm from Wilfred if the templates have been shared together with the slides for today. Has that been done, Wilfred?
The first slides have been sent. I'm sending the second slide since the presentation just finished. I'm sending the second slides and the template.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, you'll have your templates and today's presentations within your inbox in the next few minutes. And as usual, please work on the title, the abstract, and on the issue of engaging the funder. Try to answer those questions, of course, continuing to build upon the presentations that you have been doing. So we, as usual, we are taking our 2-hour break. So now it's 1:30. We will reconvene back at 3:30 for presentation and feedback. And as I had mentioned in the morning, if it's possible for your group to take a short lunch break, I mean, even 45 minutes or 30 minutes. And if some of you have been in the army, you can actually take your lunch in 10 or 15 minutes, but take your time. But also, if you can create more time to work on your presentations, that would be lovely, so that when we come back, we can see a lot of progress on your presentation. So you can agree. I will request Wilfred to open the breakout rooms even as we break now, so that whenever you guys are ready, you can come back, or you can go to the groups first, agree what time to take lunch, agree what time to come back, but you don't have to take the 1 hour lunch break. You can take it at 30 minutes, or you can even take your food and come back and start working with your colleagues. But however you want to handle it, just make sure you have lunch and you have worked on your presentations. We appreciate very much. We'll see you back at 3:30 for presentation and feedback. Unless there's someone who wants to mention something, enjoy your lunch. Anyone with something to add or to say? So thank you very much. Thank you, Sheena, for that informative session. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement. See you in 2 hours' time.
All right.
I want to have the groups follow each other as follows. We are going to have English 1 present, and then we are going to have English 2, and then we are going to have the French group presenting. So quickly, if I could get English 1. Leo Sibanda, your group, and Maria and Elizabeth and Agnes. Thank you. Let me make a check. Sheena, are you here?
Yes, Peter, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, together with Hesbon, be on standby to provide some feedback on the 2 sessions.
Yes.
English 1, please proceed.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, colleagues. First, I just want to apologize. I missed completely all the sessions 7 and 8 because of work commitments. That was a tough day at office today, but I'm glad to be back. The group deliberated, and unfortunately, I think we lost 3 of our members who were in the sessions. So we depended heavily on the 2 that joined the group. The group continued with the Let me put my thing on presentation mode. There you go. Thank you. The group continued with our project that we did on day one, which was capacity building of members of parliament on social protection in Namibia. And this is the cover page that we designed. And we note and accept the constraints of presentation format because it doesn't give you enough space to do a pretty cover page. But we followed as much as possible the guidelines. And the proposal is submitted to UNICEF for the attention of Mr. Jacob Nyamazao, who is actually the program officer for social protection in the UNICEF based in Namibia. And it's submitted by the Parliament of Namibia. And the project team is as follows. We have Ms. Maria Mambola, who's our project director, Ms. Agnes Lilungwe, who's our financial director, and Mr. Leo Sebanda, who's the head of advocacy and reporting. This is how we designed our cover page. Unfortunately, the text was quite a bit to put in a slide, so we had to make it small. I hope colleagues can read it. Our abstract, if you know, we are of the opinion that if members are capacitated in coming up with laws that protect children, then there would be reduced stress levels in the communities. And therefore, financial resources are required to conduct capacity building workshops for MPs in Africa, but we're focusing in Namibia in order to address social protection for children in Africa. We realize that the problem is an African problem, but we want to start in Namibia. And we're still going to provide evidence, which we didn't have enough time to do. There is the need for grants to address the challenge for lack of financial resources for parents. And we thought that legislation in terms of social grants and also parliamentarians could play an active role in this, but only if they are capacitated to do that. This would reduce the high rate of child school dropouts and, of course, child marriages. If the MPs were to intervene and pass laws and provide oversight and accountability over the executive arm of state. Therefore, we also provide a bit more information to show that child statistics indicate that not all affected children benefit from the social grants received for this purpose in Africa. There are a number of challenges, but we think that perhaps if members are capacitated, they could play a better role in terms of monitoring where the funds are going and also engaging effectively with the budgets for such grants. And then we are also advancing an argument that if children are not taken care of, more children will be dropping out of schools and children will get more involved in unintended pregnancies and then also get forced into early marriages, resulting in increased poverty in the society. Both boys and girls will end up in the streets as prostitutes. I think that's also a result of the problem. And then we looked at the appendices that we are going to attach to our proposal. Resumes of key personnel. We have stated some of the key personnel in the cover letter, but we also have other personnel in the project that will help in executing the project. We'll also attach a letter of support. That letter of support will indicate the support we are getting from Parliament as well as from the SADC PF as a parliamentary forum. And then we will attach our evaluation instruments to show the funders what instruments we'll be using to evaluate the projects. We'll also attach our financial statements so that we can show how we source our funds and how we apply them in the different programs. This is to give confidence to our funders. And then we will attach our implementation plan. This will also give funders an indication of how the project is going to be rolled out and what is expected to happen at what period of time. And then we'll attach a certificate of status. I mean, we are an NPO, and therefore it is important to attach a certificate of status that we are in good standing with the registrar of NPOs in Namibia. I think this is where we ended. When we were kicked out, we were at the point where we were going to deliberate the process for submitting applications. This is as far as we went. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo Sibanda and your group. Any addition from your group members? If not, let's get quick feedback from the other group members and facilitators. So it's time for feedback. Thank you for that presentation and for that work that your group has done, Leo. Ifina, do you have a comment on the group?
It had a good flow. Oh, I see Hezbon was about to speak. Let me let him open first because the hub of the presentation was related to session 7.
Okay.
Over.
All right. Right. Thank you, Leo, for the presentation. So what you are, if I may go back to your title, I think trade capacity building of MPs, members of parliament on social protection. So remember what we said about the title, it should communicate what you are trying to do. I think it's good, but there's room for improvement. Why? Because why are we capacitating the MPs on social protection? Is that the end of the story? There's something we expect to achieve. So what your innovation or your intervention is going to do, if there is a way you can weave that into the title, then somebody can be able to have an idea what you are trying to do. So at this point, the way the title is worded, we don't know why we are capacitating the MPs on social protection. So I know that it is because you want to solve the problem about children. Now, when we now come to the problem, there's improvement, but I think the feedback we gave, you've not had a chance to incorporate them, because when you started, you kind of gave us some kind of theory of change. You claim that if we capacitate the MPs, then they will be more knowledgeable about these issues that affect children, you know, like child marriage. This will help dropout, and even prostitution and things like that will be prevented. In summary, you say that you will be trying to solve poverty, because if children are dropping out and all those, then they will not be economically empowered, then they become poor and all that. So you are trying to solve the big problem you are solving is attempt to solve poverty, but you can choose to narrow it or you can leave it that broad. Only make sure that somebody is convinced that the way to solve it is by capacitating MPs. Maybe there are those other elements that I didn't touch on, but that's what I gathered. So the significance was coming out, but the problem is still needs to be made clear. In the abstract, which problem statement is part of it, you focused. I'm going to challenge this group and say that you focused more on the problem. But the other elements, like the need statement, the process statement, the outcome statement, the sustainability, were not very, they didn't come out. So those need to be, they need to come out. You need to come up with those statements in your summary or in your abstract. So that part needed some more work. But otherwise, as you are trying to explain, somebody can follow and see why your project needs to be funded. You just need to build a strong case based on those feedback for now. Over to Peter.
Thank you, Hesbon. Sheena?
No comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other feedback from any member of either Leo's group or the other groups? Going once, twice, and thrice. Thank you, group one. Let's move on to group two, English 2, please. Your time. Frankel and others? Frankel, Geraldina, Apadu, Manuel.
Sim, boa tarde. Eu estive no grupo de trabalho, mas
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, Geraldine is speaking. You can go ahead.
Sim, muito obrigada. Eu estava a dizer que eu estive no grupo de trabalho, mas infelizmente a língua de trabalho foi em inglês e eu não pude dar a minha contribuição. Eu estive lá, os colegas chamaram tanto por mim, mas infelizmente eu tenho as limitações, eu tenho que reconhecer. Se calhar se tivéssemos um grupo de português, para o meu azar, como nós estivemos no primeiro dia de trabalho, talvez foi por isso que não foi criado o grupo. Muito obrigada.
Okay, that is noted, Geraldina. So, did she speak on behalf of the group? Can we also have, because she might not have understood what was happening, but something definitely was happening in that group. So, could we have Manuel or Frankild?
Frankild is there because today I was out of the group. I was in a meeting with the NAC because we are preparing an oversight mission for MPs. So I was out for a long time. That's why I didn't join for a long time.
So Frankild is our person. Frankild, are you presenting?
I can hear you. It's my sincere apology. We were together with Geraldine without knowing that the two of us couldn't understand each other. I keep on trying to reach on her until I gave up. I don't know if it's a her or a she, sorry. And then the two colleagues, Manuel and Nicholas, only joined me the last 6-7 minutes. And that's when we were now to come up with something. So it was really unfortunate. I couldn't do anything by myself. And when the colleagues joined, they came too late. So as a result, I have nothing to present.
Okay. That is noted. We'll give a way forward after this. The French group.
Oui, bonjour, vous m'entendez? Alors, voilà, je commencerai déjà par m'excuser pour ma collègue Liv. Elle rencontre des difficultés en ce moment à se connecter. Donc, voilà la raison pourquoi je suis tout seul dans le groupe. Mais n'eût étant, on a pu quand même échanger à travers des SMS. Donc, ceci étant, on a déjà un titre pour commencer. Le titre qu'on a trouvé, ce serait de soutenir et encourager les enfants à aller à l'école pour leur avenir. Donc, de là, en se basant sur le modèle qu'on a déjà eu avant, on s'est dit qu'on va cibler l'UNICEF comme bailleur, vu que eux, ils œuvrent dans ce sens-là, et vu qu'il s'agit bien ici de la scolarité des enfants. Donc, ce qu'on va faire, c'est déjà d'aller sur leur plateforme pour s'assurer qu'il existe bien un financement en ce sens-là, afin qu'on aille dans le même sens par rapport au projet. Si oui, nous pourrons ainsi avancer et préparer notre soumission. Mais si c'est le cas contraire, il s'agira alors ici d'explorer d'autres plateformes qui œuvrent en ce sens-là. Et c'est seulement après que nous pourrions préparer un résumé et un sommaire exécutif à notre projet. Donc, comme c'est à ce niveau-là qu'on est rendu dans notre groupe, comme l'a souligné ma collègue ce matin, on est en pleine session, il y a aussi ça. Donc, l'après-midi, on a eu plusieurs tâches à faire. Donc, on a essayé de jongler en même temps entre la formation et la session. Donc, voilà où c'est qu'on est rendu dans notre travail. Vos commentaires seront les bienvenus. Merci.
Thank you, Christian, for that. We appreciate that this is schooling, and this schooling has people that have, different balls that are in the air, and you cannot leave some balls to fall. You have to balance all of them, and so we have to do all this work together. I'm inviting any feedback from the other groups and also from the facilitators.
Merci.
Okay.
Peter, I'll go first if, as we wait for others.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the title of Christian study is, I'm not sure I got it, but this is what I still have, encouraging or supporting children to go to school for their future, something like that. Just like with the other group,
yes,
it has some information. Okay, thank you. So just like with the other group, your title needs to communicate what you are trying to do, which is encouraging or supporting children to go to school. For why? For their future. Is that it's still lacking some, we still need some information a little bit to know why children should be going to school. Of course, the future, it makes sense, thinking broadly, but you don't want to be that broad until we don't know what you are doing to these children. What is happening is still not very clear. So something that caught my attention when you are describing your project, I don't know if I got it right, but it was something like this, that you don't want to spend your resources or your time and all that because you still haven't identified a funder. You're thinking of UNICEF, which is okay, but you are claiming that we until we get an opportunity, maybe some funding announcement, that is when you will start thinking of putting together a proposal. I don't know if I misunderstood you, but if that is what it is, then I challenge you to consider thinking otherwise, because you okay, you look for an opportunity, but you also have to have an idea. If I don't know if my colleague Shina talked about this, many times we write and we don't succeed. So it means that the idea is there. So what is our next task? We look for opportunity. It is better to have an idea and you look for an opportunity that fits it, as opposed to looking for the opportunity, then come up with the idea. So that is my challenge, or my critique to your group, Christian. Come up with the idea bank. All potential studies or projects that you can look for funding for, as opposed to opportunity bank. So you have all sorts of opportunities. And I think when we started this workshop, we were challenged that money is there. Somebody claims that money is not the problem. How to get it and spend it is the problem. So how to get it is to come up with fundable ideas. So I challenge this group again and gently. I hope you got me. Thank you very much. Over to Peter.
C'est bien noté, merci.
Thank you, Hesbon. Someone else? Any other feedback from someone? So thank you, Christian, and thank you for the work that you have managed to do alone. We are getting into the weekend and we have one more day remaining. Yes? Okay. All right. So it is, okay. Sheena is saying Hesbon shared what I could have shared on Ideas Bank. Thanks. Yeah, so it's quite important to have those ideas, and I've seen cases where Christian, even if you submit one idea to the donor, if you submit to UNICEF and they don't fund it, you can as well take the idea and repackage it and send it to another donor, the same idea, or you can have several ideas and submit to multiple donors, of course. So that is good feedback to get from Hesbon as well. So allow me to give the way forward as we move. We have one day remaining, which is on Monday, and I want just to suggest some ways that we can make Monday a successful day based on what we've been able to learn from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today, Friday. So this is my take on this. We are getting into a weekend. I know we also have our own social lives, and we have other balls, as I mentioned, that are in the air, and we have to keep juggling all of them. I would suggest that for the groups, English 1, English 2, and the French group, that you might want to just do some little brushing up on the presentations. And if you're able to use what we call Google Slides, just upload your PowerPoint presentations on Google Slides, where you can be able to work simultaneously with team members. So everyone can be able to edit a section. And the other thing you can do is to share some sections where people can actually input information. And so everybody is also able to view the same presentation at the same time. And you can devote a few minutes during the weekend to work on that, even though we'll have some little time to brush them up. But it would be a good thing to work it out. I know you've not had enough time to work through the groups during the 4 days, and as we mentioned, many people have other different things to do. But if you could set aside some few minutes to work on these presentations and share the sessions, and say, you as a group member take this section and work on it, and then refer back to the session presentations, because by now you have received all the session presentations, and they can help you to really refine your areas. And as far as Monday is concerned, we are supposed to have a presentation that has a maximum of 10 slides, and they have to include everything that we have learned from Monday. So it's almost like you're now applying, and so we want to see everything from the title to the end. You can tell us what even appendices that you have been able to put to that application. So we want to see a kind of a full application, and this will help you once you work on this during this time. Once you really get a real opportunity, this is the same presentation template that you'll go to, and it will guide you and give you everything that you need to do your application on. So that is my take. And also during Monday's presentations, you can as well share out the sections and say, maybe so and so will present from slide 1 to slide 3. The other person will present from slide 4 to slide 5. I'm just giving ideas on how we can make this work out. But otherwise, I'm happy so far for the work that we've been able to do. We appreciate that people are juggling a lot of things, and having time to input into these presentations is also a plus. So we appreciate that. I want to say that it's okay, we can close early today. And this is also to say that during this time between now and, because usually we would have finished at around 6. So if it's possible, we could, at around 5, sorry. So we could also, if you can also work on your presentations after this, that would also still be welcome. I want to welcome Hesbon to say if there's something I have missed as far as Monday's schedule is concerned, and to say anything else that you would want to say. And then we are going to close shortly. Hesbon.
No, Peter, I don't have anything. You've captured it quite well. I don't have anything. I just encourage all of us to, I know that we are busy and being pulled in different directions, but let's just try to commit to participating on Monday so that we can end this workshop at a high note. So thank you very much, Peter, and everyone else.
Thank you, Hesbon. Manuel, you were asking about the password for the Google Room. It's not a Google Room, it's Google Slides. If you have a Gmail address, you're able to use their Google. It's a Microsoft PowerPoint. Well, not Microsoft PowerPoint, but it's Google Slides. So it's just like a PowerPoint. It's like Microsoft PowerPoint, but it's online. It's live. So if I'm working on it, you can also work on it at the same time. It's called Google Slides. You can just Google how to access Google Slides, and you will be able to see how you can work through that and invite other people that have a Gmail address, or people within your group, you can also invite them to, it's a website, you can have that web page or web address and send to someone, and they can be able to open and see the same kind of presentation that you're working on. Thank you. I still want to request.
Thank you.
Welcome, Manuel. I still want to request that after this, I'm left briefly with the coordinating team, and I want to give a minute to anyone of the participants that want to say something as we close for this Friday.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Manuel.
Mr. Chair, I think that I lost a lot today because I was out. We are preparing oversight mission for MPs. So I was in a meeting with the NAC, so I didn't get I didn't get to the workshop earlier. So sorry for that. Maybe Monday I'll be in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Anyone else who has something else to say?
Peter Rock,
Yes, Leo.
No, thank you very much to the facilitators for good content. I mean, even though I missed both sessions in the morning, when I went through the slides at lunchtime, I actually could follow and understand what it is that we were expected to do. I think it goes to show that they put a lot of work into this, and we thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So I will say thank you, everyone, for your time. Geraldina, thank you. You're welcome. Muito obrigada. Thank you. Obrigada also. Everyone, enjoy your weekend, and kindly let me be left briefly with the coordinating team. So participants, goodbye. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you and goodbye.
Yes, you
Thank
can.
You. See you on Monday.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Bye-bye.